In this presentation, we're going to be looking at covalent and ionic bonds. Bonds between different atoms in different ways. First off, we have ionic bonds. Ionic bonds are between a metal and a nonmetal, or multiple metals and nonmetals, and they work by distributing all the valence electrons into the nonmetals. Here's an example of an ionic bond between magnesium, which has 2 valence electrons, and oxygen, which has 6 valence electrons. Now, bonds work by the Octet Rule. Basically says that every atom wants to have a full valence shell of 8. So, when magnesium and oxygen bond, in an ionic bond, magnesium gives both of its electrons to the oxygen atom, which completes its valence shell. Since magnesium in its neutral state has 2 valence electrons, when it has 0, it has a positive 2 charge, which is the opposite for oxygen. In a covalent bond, it's different. They're between 2 or more nonmetals, and the electrons are divided between the atoms, unlike in an ionic bond where they're just all transferred to the nonmetal. Here's an example. Oxygen has 6 valence electrons. As we know from the Octet Rule, it wants 8. Atoms want a full valence shell of 8 electrons. So here's an example. If we have oxygen, which has 6 electrons, it still needs 2 more. But since hydrogen only has 1 valence electron, we need to bring in another hydrogen. So when we have 2 hydrogens that have 2 valence electrons to give, they share with the oxygen, which completes both the valence shells of each atom. Now this molecule right here is pretty familiar. It's called water. I don't know if you heard of it. And the electrons that are left over are called lone pairs because they are not shared between any. A central atom in a covalent bond is the atom with the lowest electronegativity. Basically, the central atom is the one that all the other atoms are bonded to. Now, you might be asking, what's the point of valence electrons? Like, what do they do? Well, valence electrons are kind of the staple of chemistry. They basically determine how atoms and molecules bond with each other. The Octet Rule says that every atom wants to have a full valence shell of 8. So, atoms bond with each other to fill the valence shell.